Good evening, everyone, and welcome to DC Public Schools Parent University. I'm Natalie Treadgold, joining you from the DCPS Family Engagement Team. I'm going to kick us off and share a few housekeeping notes, and then turn it over to our awesome presenter, Cheryl Ohlson, who will be sharing lots of great information for our early childhood families. So if you are the parent of a pre-K 3 or 4-year-old, then this session is for you. We have some really great Parent University sessions coming up for you in the next couple of weeks, including the next session, which will be about supporting specialized instruction or special education during learning at home, a session on Canvas, and lots of other great ones coming up. And there's a link here where you can RSVP for future sessions. There is interpretation in Spanish available, and one of my colleagues will share the link for that in the chat for you all. But we also have subtitles in other languages. So you can see on this slide here that if you click the gear in the bottom of the video player, you should be able to select captions or subtitles in other languages. As this is a live event, we will be engaging with you guys in the Q&A box. So there's a question and answer box on your screen. So you can use this box to ask questions, share ideas that you have, or suggestions for other families. And we also encourage you to upvote other questions that you see that you're curious about. So we have some great folks on the back end who will be responding to as many questions as they possibly can. Know that if a lot of people are asking the same question, we may only publish it once. So make sure to upvote those questions that you are also curious about. And we may also respond privately rather than publishing a question. One final piece before we dig in here, I want to share a few community agreements that we use to guide our engagement here with you this evening. One is that we're all in this situation that we've never been in before. We've never kicked off a virtual school year, and we're all doing our best. So we ask that you assume the best intention of each other and of us. The next is to go hard on people and not go hard on ideas and not on people. So we're really curious to hear what you're worried about, what your challenges are, what your suggestions are, and we hope that you'll be honest and also respectful in your engagement. And finally, accept non-closure. So we have an hour with you, and we're going to get it through as much as we possibly can, but we sadly won't be able to answer every single question or get to every single facet of DCPS learning at home. So we hope that you'll continue to engage with us, and you can expect some follow-up after this event in the coming days. So with all of that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my wonderful colleague Cheryl from our early childhood division, and she is going to take it from here.
Thank you, Natalie, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with this group of early childhood parents to talk about what virtual learning will look like this fall for DCPS for our pre-K families, and also things that families can do at home to support learning with their young children. We can go ahead and click to the next one. So for many of you families, you may have had the opportunity to participate in virtual learning last year if you had a pre-K 3-year-old who is now pre-K 4, or if you had older children. If you did so, your experience might, oops, go back one more if you don't mind. Your experience might have looked a bit like this. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. You may have started in the upper left-hand corner, like our friend Oprah, with lots of excitement and enthusiasm, feeling like you got this. You may have looked a little bit like the mom in the lower left-hand corner, all put together, even wearing a little bit of makeup, smiling, and just filled with enthusiasm about working with her child. And then eventually it might have looked a little bit more like the man in the middle, and eventually Sue, who we see here in the far right. If this wasn't your experience, fantastic, congratulations. But if this was similar to your experience, please know that you are not alone, and this was a very common experience. We can go on to the next one, which shows us a little bit about what this experience may have been like from the child's perspective. And you can see here Ben, who is not quite a preschooler, but still I think captured the experience very well. It is not going good. My mom's getting stressed out. My mom is really getting confused. We took a break so my mom can figure this stuff out. I am telling you, it is not going good. So Ben sort of captured what this experience was like in the fall for many families. Who were all sort of thrown into this unexpectedly and figuring it out as we went along. We can go ahead, Natalie, to the next one. But we've got this. We learned a lot from the spring with lots of feedback from families and also from our teaching staff. And we have a fantastic plan in place for this school year. Before we jump into that, just a note about who we are. I work within the Division of Early Childhood Education, which supports and manages our pre-K programs throughout our schools. And we are located within the Office of Elementary Schools, which supports principals and school staff in implementing high quality programming across all of our elementary grades. You can go on, Natalie. The next slide, if we can, there we go. Okay, and so this is a little bit about what we'll be doing for the next probably about 50 minutes that we have together. We'll be spending about the first half of our time together talking about the DCPS virtual model for early childhood education, what the structure will look like, and what the resources that will be available for families will look like as well. And then we'll shift gears and we'll spend some time talking about what families and parents and other caregivers can do to support children's learning from home. We know that when we're talking about pre-kindergartners, the virtual learning experience looks very different than it does for older children. So we'll be talking about what that can look like at home and how you can build this into your daily schedule and your routines in a way that that is seamless and simple and is not disruptive. So as I mentioned a minute ago, we got a lot of feedback and we spent a lot of time last spring engaging with families and also engaging with our pre-K teachers to learn from them what was working well, what was challenging, and what suggestions families had and teachers had in terms of things that we could do even better and build upon in the fall. And so that is what we have based our model for this school year on. And so these are some of the main points that came across in the feedbacks that families and teachers sort of articulated to us loudly and clear. The first was that large group instruction for pre-kindergartners just was not effective. So putting 15 or 20 3- and 4-year-olds in front of a screen and expecting them to engage for a period of time just didn't work. And as you all know, as parents of little ones, they'll just get up and walk away when they're done. And when teachers aren't there in the room with them, it can be really difficult to re-engage them and bring them back. So large group was tough. We also heard a lot that individual lessons and small group lessons were very much appreciated and worked very well. They helped the children to be much more engaged and interested in what was going on. And they helped the teachers to really learn about where the children were developmentally, what they needed. And the teachers were better able to really tailor their instruction and create experiences that were appropriate to each child's needs. Similarly, family check-ins. And so many of our teachers in the spring engaged regularly with families on a one-on-one basis. And these were really appreciated with families. These were opportunities for the parents to ask questions and get some suggestions and guidance on things they could be doing at home. But they were also really valuable opportunities for our teachers to hear from parents. and to hear from the parents' perspective about what was working and what wasn't working and what each individual child needed. And then teachers were able to, again, adjust and tailor their instruction to the needs of the child. So those were very much appreciated and I think really important in the virtual model. The next one will be no surprise to anybody on this call. Small children, their attention spans are very brief. So long periods of online engagement just does not work well when we're talking about pre-kindergartners. And short bursts of instruction that allow children to engage virtually for shorter periods of time, and then to have some space to get up, to walk around, to play, that type of thing, and then to engage again. That worked very well as well. Simplicity. This is something that we heard a lot from families. So what was challenging were complicated activities that required a lot of materials, that required some preparation and some real thought and planning to put together. And families communicated that they really appreciated very simple activities that they could weave into their daily routine without a lot of planning, without a lot of preparation, and that they could easily incorporate into things that they were doing throughout the day anyway in order to make sure their children were learning. Related to that is this next one, information about targets for development and learning. So these are basically developmental milestones or goals. We heard from parents quite often, we'd like to know exactly what our children should be working on, what are the skills or objectives that they should be developing. And then they felt that they would know as parents how to support that, but they really were looking for information on what are those developmental targets or goals. So we'll be providing a great deal of that this year as well. And then finally, obviously, technology. It's very hard to engage in virtual instruction. Families don't have the technology to enable them to do so. So happy to report that we will be providing tablets this year to the families who need them, so to support and make sure that all of our young children are able to access the wonderful online resources that will be available to them. So based on the feedback, these are some of the key points of the virtual model for early childhood, and we'll be going through this in more detail in the next few minutes. But as an overview, based on the feedback that we heard, what you'll see in the program is a lot of small group instruction, very little, if any, whole group or large group instruction, and varied learning formats. So some individual opportunities to engage with teachers, as well as a lot of small group as well. Ample time each day for unstructured child-directed play. We know young children both need play because they don't have the attention span to sit and engage online for a long period of time. And we also know that they learn through play. So when they are engaging in more unstructured play, those are actually great learning opportunities for them. Opportunities for individualized child and family check-ins based on the feedback that I described above. We're making sure that teachers are building that into their weekly schedule. So every week, each child will have an opportunity for individualized lessons with the teacher, and families will have an opportunity for individualized check-ins as well. And again, those are great opportunities for families to provide their perspective, to give feedback to the teacher, and also to get additional guidance from the teacher. And supports for parents and caregivers also. We'll talk about this in just a moment. And those include things like resources about those developmental objectives or milestones to help parents to see which are the milestones that teachers are working on with their children at any given time, as well as online resources and a lot of activities, including very simple activities that parents can do at home that will address each of those milestones and help them support their child's learning. All right, Natalie. So this is just a snapshot of the model, and I know the print here is small and might be a little bit difficult to see, but that's okay. We'll be going into these components in a little bit more detail in just a moment. But what you'll see here again is a variety of different activities, including morning meeting with the teacher, small group lessons, individual time, snack and lunch with the teacher, opportunities for rest and opportunities for play. As well as individualized lessons and what we call inner core classes, also called specials classes. Those include things like music, visual arts, physical education, those kinds of things that our pre-K children would normally experience during the day in the classroom. We'll also be making those opportunities available to them in this new virtual format. All right. So the streamlined platforms, for those of you who participated in a similar Parent University session on Tuesday, you might have seen a very similar slide to this. In many respects, the platforms that we're using are similar to what our students K-12 will experience. We'll be using a common learning management system called Canvas, and all of the resources that are available to families and also to teachers can be located through Canvas. So this is sort of the one-stop shop for parents and for teachers. And children will log on to Canvas each day. We know for our pre-kindergartners, what that often means is that parents will log on with them or caregivers, as our little ones often aren't able to manage their own learning in the way that older students are. So children and families will log on each day, and that will count as their attendance. That's how attendance will be taken. And that will include both the live instruction that will take place and also anytime a family and a child log on to do independent learning activities that will be available on the site. We'll be using Microsoft Teams for our live class meetings, and that also will be housed in Canvas. So when families log on to Canvas, they can click on a little link for Teams, and that will take them to the live lessons. Okay, Natalie. So as I mentioned, Canvas will be how we're tracking attendance from day to day. So anytime the child and family logs on to participate in live instruction, that is how we note that the child is present and attending that day. But we will also track attendance by families logging on to Canvas anytime during the day between 6 a.m. in the morning until midnight that night. And we know that many of our families have complicated schedules. Families need to work during the day and are unable to sometimes engage in the live lessons. And we have families who need to have their child enrolled in childcare during the day in order to accommodate work schedules and that kind of thing. And that's okay. Families can do that. And the system is really designed to be able to accommodate the very real and sometimes complicated schedules that families have. So families can really make this work in a way that fits for their own schedule. And because of that, we encourage families to enroll as soon as possible so that we make sure that we can make accessible all of the resources that are available through Canvas and through our wonderful teaching staff to families, including families whose children may be enrolling in childcare, again, because of work schedules and that kind of thing. So if you have not already done so, please go ahead and enroll, and we will make sure that the resources are available to you. All right, Natalie. So we'll spend the next few minutes talking about what these resources are. And so on this slide, what you'll see is the three basic components of the virtual model. At the top is our teacher-directed learning. That is also called live instruction or synchronous instruction. Those are those scheduled times a day when teachers are online to lead a morning meeting, to lead a small group lesson or a read aloud or something like that, anything that is live engagement with the teacher. That is what we call the teacher-directed learning, and we'll go through that in a little bit more detail in just a minute. And then we have the family-directed learning, and we know that for our early childhood families especially, this is really, really important, again, because our young students just don't have the self-management techniques or the literacy skills or all of those other things, the time management skills that are required for them to engage independently with virtual learning. And so we know that parents always play a critical role in young children's learning. And during this virtual period, we know that that's even more so. And parents really are the vehicles through which kids will be engaging with these online resources. So we have a great deal of resources that are available to families through the Canvas portal that, again, families can do during the day. They can do on their own time, early in the morning, before they go to work, in the evening, after work, those type of things, on the weekends, whenever fits for them. And then the assessment component, we'll talk about that a little bit as well in just a few minutes. We can go ahead to the next one. So this is the teacher-directed learning. This is that top line that I showed you just a minute ago. And this gives you a little bit more detail about what the teacher-directed learning portion of the program will look like. So as you'll see, and as I've mentioned before, this will include what we're calling half group virtual meetings. So rather than getting 16 children or 20 children together for a morning meeting led by the teacher, the class will be divided in half. So that'll be usually 8 to 10 students. It might be fewer, but it certainly won't be any more than that. Together for these half group meetings, which is an opportunity for the group to come together, to build that sense of community in the morning, to set the tone for the day, to get a joyful, excited start to the day, give children an opportunity to see their friends, to hear from their friends, to have unstructured conversations about things that are of interest to them, things that are happening in their own lives. And through these conversations, they're fantastic opportunities for teachers to develop language skills, thinking skills, social emotional skills, all of those kinds of things. So when you're listening to some of these morning meetings, it may just feel like conversation, and that's actually great, because in really good conversation, that's when all of those skills are being developed. And it's also just really important for children to have an opportunity to be heard, and for teachers to be really communicating to them that their experiences matter and their voices matter, and that's an opportunity for them to share their thoughts and ideas. There will also be a series of small group lessons, which are also teacher directed. These will usually be more focused on specific skills and specific concepts that the teacher knows that the children are ready to develop and need to develop next. They will be tailored to the children's individual needs, so the teacher will be doing some mixed groupings. So they might have the same group of 4 or 5 students together for some lessons, and they might mix it up and have different groups of students together for different lessons based on the need and the characteristics of the children. Those small group lessons will generally be about 4 to 5 students, although sometimes there'll be 2 or 3, so they might be even smaller. And the same thing with read alouds. So read alouds, again, are fantastic opportunities to develop language skills, literacy skills, thinking skills, as well as other skills. And those will generally take place in small group as well. And all of those experiences that I just described should happen at least bi-weekly per child. So every child should experience several of each of these things per week. What you see in those 2 boxes to the right are those individualized experiences. So individual teacher-child lessons and check-ins, those should happen once a week, sometimes more, but no less than once a week. Some of those will be very focused lessons that are really focusing on very specific skills. Again, the skills that the child knows, or that the teacher knows that the child needs to work on. And some of those may be looser and unstructured opportunities for the teacher just to talk to the child, to build the relationship. As a parent, you will expect to see a lot more of that relationship building kind of conversation happening in the early weeks. So less of the very focused, targeted instruction in those first several weeks of school, and then more of the teacher taking advantage of these opportunities to talk to the child, to hear from the child, to really get to know the child, all of those things that are usually happening in the classroom in person in those early days of school. The teacher will be finding opportunities to recreate those experiences virtually early in the year to build relationships with the child before jumping right into instruction. And then what you'll see is over time, not that those relationship building conversations ever end, but you'll see more and more of the more instructional type of lessons being developed as teachers have developed those relationships with children. And similarly, the family check-ins, those will happen once a week, if not more, throughout the year. And again, those are great opportunities for the families to get information from the teacher, but also for teachers to get information from the families, and to learn from them what's working, what may not be working so well, and what advice do parents have in terms of ways that teachers can adjust and tailor the work that they're doing with children in order to make sure it's both engaging and interesting and also effective for the young children. Natalie, we can move on to the next one. So now we'll switch and talk about the family-directed learning. So this was that second line on that chart that I showed you just a minute ago. And these are things that are that the families, again, can log on to Canvas at any time of their own schedule and engage with. The Canvas portal is sort of the doorway for all of these resources. And when you enter the Canvas portal, you will see, and we're going to take a look at this in just a minute, but what you'll see is a family toolkit. And the family toolkit includes very simple resources that include guidance for families in supporting early learning at home. So very general things like how you can set up a home learning environment that's appropriate for 3 and 4 and young 5-year-old children to support learning at home, tips for how you might structure your day, tips for how you might reinforce skills that the teacher addressed during a lesson earlier, that type of thing. So just general guidance. And then there are what we're calling the Canvas course companions. And again, I know my colleague Corey Colgan talked about these on Tuesday for those who might have been on that call as well. And the Canvas course companions are resources for families that are aligned to our curriculum and that address specific skills that are addressed within the curriculum. And those include video activities with parent guides. So what you might see is some guidance on how you can implement an activity that targets a particular skill or a particular objective, and then a video that shows you a sample of somebody else actually implementing that. And so you can see an example of what that might look like. The choice boards, those are simple. If you think of like a bingo card or something like that, it's similar to that idea. And those are choice boards that, again, focus on specific skills that children need to be working on. But there's very simple activities that people can weave into their daily routine. So not a lot of planning, no preparation. They might be simple things like how you can focus on sorting as you're sorting the laundry and identifying colors. How you can focus on counting or creating patterns as you're setting out a snack for your child, or how you can focus on some math skills as you're taking a walk around the block or taking a walk around the apartment. And so really simple things like that, based on what parents are doing throughout the day anyway, that they can weave in the specific skills so that they're supporting learning in very simple, very seamless ways. Go on to the next one, Natalie. So this is a screenshot of what the Canvas portal looks like when families log on. It is family facing, so it is designed for the families to engage with. You'll see the top green button, that's our classroom. And each teacher will tailor that tab to be unique to that particular classroom. So it will have information about the classroom, information about the teacher and the teacher assistant, information about the children and the families in the class, the daily routine, those types of things. And then I'm going to skip over to the right where you will see the family toolkit. And that is what I mentioned a few minutes ago. That is, again, simple resources that will help families think about how can they set up their home learning environment, how can they set up their daily routine, just simple tips on ways that they can support early learning at home and build that into what we know can be very complicated family routines and schedules. You'll also see the Teams link there. So when teachers are leading live instruction through Teams, there is that link there. Families can just click on that link and that will take you exactly where you need to go. And then finally, that blue button in the middle, that's the learning portal. And that is the button that will take families to the additional resources that most of which are related to the curriculum. And actually, if we move on to the next slide, we'll see a little bit about what you'll see in that part of the portal. So there's a section that looks just like this, and it goes week by week. So families can click on whichever week they are in a particular unit or theme, and it will give you a list of activities that you can do at home related to that unit or theme that also can support different skills and developmental objectives. I should take a step back for a minute and just explain, in our curriculum, like many of the K5 curriculum as well, it is broken down into units or themes or what we call studies, and those are simply areas areas of interest that the teacher focuses on for a period of time. And so it might be something like insects, for example, and that means that for a period of weeks, maybe 4 weeks, as many as 6 or even 8 weeks, if the children are really interested in that particular theme, the teacher will be talking a lot about insects and reading books about them and studying them and helping the children to generate questions about insects and then to research those questions and come up with answers. And within that unit and within all those activities, literacy skills are built in, math skills, science skills. So within that theme, all of those different skills are incorporated. So that when, as a parent, you click on week 1, for example, it may give you activities that are related to insects, if that's the theme, and things that you can do at home that are focused on that theme as well as that focus on specific skills or objectives that children should be learning during that time. There are some activities in each of these that are unrelated to the theme that families may be interested in as well, but many of them are theme related. And as you see in the circles down below, you'll see the link for the choice board, which again is what I described a moment ago. Very simple activities that you can click on and just incorporate into everything you are doing normally, washing the dishes, setting the table, making dinner, all of those kinds of things. Some read aloud, library activities, as well as some extension activities where you can build on the study or the theme that the teacher happens to be working on at that time with children. All right, we can go to the next one. And this is just to look at some of the studies that I mentioned. So they will begin, obviously, with the beginning of the year study, that is getting to know you study, and help children get to know the teacher, get to know one another, learn about the routines and that kind of thing, as well as the other studies, insects, buildings, clothes, trees, etc. We can go ahead. And so this is a sample of what the schedule might look like for a child from the child's perspective. This is just a sample. So at each school, the principals and the teachers are working currently to develop schedules that are appropriate for their own staff. Some of our schools have very large early childhood programs, some are much smaller. And so to some extent, this will be look a little bit different, but as a general sample, you can see here in the blue, those are activities that are teacher-led, live, that children and families would log on to with the teacher and participate in. And then you see the orangish activities. During those times, children can be playing. They can be just taking a break, taking some rest, having a snack. That's also time that they can be going into Canvas with a caregiver and working through some of those activities that I just described. They don't have to do that during those times. This is just a sample of a schedule that a family can create. Like I said, they can be done early in the morning, they can be done in the evening, but they can also be sprinkled out throughout the day like this. The optional lunch chew and chat, what that is simply is trying to recreate what happens in the classroom during family style meals, which is an opportunity when we're in the classroom for children to come together with their teacher and have a meal together, and also to have conversation. And again, through that conversation, teachers are developing language skills, social skills, thinking skills, all that kind of thing. And so that will be done virtually, but still an opportunity for the teacher to recreate that experience as much as possible. And then you'll see the specials classes again. Again, these include visual arts, music, physical education. Sometimes you'll see things like dance or other opportunities for kids to engage in those opportunities. Sometimes these will be live. In many cases, teachers will record them. So the child might be able to log back on again and again and again and participate in his or her favorite music lesson, for example. That type of thing. All right, Natalie, go ahead. And then finally, a note about assessment. And so we use 2 primary tools for assessment. As you can imagine, with our 3- and 4-year-old children, assessment looks different than it does with older children. We don't sit them down to take tests like we might with an older child. So we use something called the ASQ, or the Ages and Stages questionnaire, and also GOLD. Both the ASQ and Gold are observation-based. What that means is we are observing children with parents to see where they are developmentally, what skills they're working on, what skills they have mastered. So rather than giving them a test to assess what they can do, we're doing that through observation. We're setting up activities and then observing how the children do and what they've mastered, again, what they need to work on. They are holistic. What I mean by that is we're not just looking at narrow skills like how many letters do they know, how many numbers do they know, but we're looking at math skills, language skills, literacy skills, social skills, and even physical skills, motor skills, and social emotional skills as well. We say it's collaborative because now, even more than usual, we will be doing this in collaboration with families. So teachers will be observing as they are able to during live instruction, but they will also be engaging with families to talk about how children are doing, what skills they have mastered, and what skills might be coming down the road that the teachers can help support with. The Ages and Stages questionnaire is a tool that helps the teachers both to get a sense of where children are developmentally and to identify children who might benefit from some additional support in a particular domain, language, motor, anything like that. And that is implemented in the beginning of the year, whereas Gold is something that is implemented in an ongoing basis throughout the year. We can go ahead to the next one. All right, and so we'll be taking a look at some of the skills that children need to be set up for success in kindergarten and beyond, and some of the things that parents can do and other caregivers can do at home to support them. We can keep going, Natalie. So we're going to take a look at these skills here. These are from the Gold assessment, and so when your child starts school, you will have access to the Gold tool. So you'll be able to log on and you'll be able to see all of these specific skills and how they increase as children grow in age from the 3 to 5 period. So I'll give you just a moment to take a look at some of these skills here. And we can move on to the next one. And obviously we will be looking at literacy and math skills as well. So this gives you a sample of some of the important literacy and math skills that teachers are focusing on and tailoring their instruction to. We can go ahead. And so just a quick note about developmental variation. What that means basically is that, as you know, children develop at very, very different rates and at a very different pace. And there is a wide range, especially in early childhood, in terms of what is considered appropriate or normal development. And this is what it looks like in the Gold objectives that teachers are following. And so you'll see, for example, the objective here is uses an expanding expressive vocabulary. And if you look at what's under 6, describes and tells the use of many familiar items. For example, when making pancakes, the child might say, here is the beater, let me beat the egg with it. That type of vocabulary development usually happens at around 6. It could happen at age 5. It could happen as much as age 7. And so that gives you a sense of sort of the variation, but we do expect it to happen within that age range. And then we can go down to the next one, which is a little bit more focused on identifying and naming letters. And similar here, you see that the objective is identifying and naming letters, but what that looks like really varies depending on the name of or the age of the child. And so at the age of 4, we expect children generally to be recognizing and naming as many as 10 letters. Some children may do that before 4, some children a little bit later, but generally in the 4-year-old range, we expect that to happen. All right, we can keep going. So this brings us back to the developmental objectives that I mentioned a few minutes ago. I've pulled out a few of them here that we're going to focus on for just a minute. And these are some of the skills that are the most critical. All of the ones that I showed you are important, but these are some of the ones that are most critical to children's early learning and to their success in kindergarten and beyond. So take a look at these. And then think about your own child as you're thinking about these and about where they are. Again, remembering that there is a wide range of variability within this, but thinking about where your child is with some of these skills. And also take a moment just to think about, maybe pick one or two of these. And these are the kinds of skills that teachers will be working on in the classroom. Think about one or two of these and think about some things that you regularly do in your daily routine at home that is actually helping to teach those skills or helping to support the development of these skills, even if you're not thinking about it. And then with that, we're going to take a moment to take a look at a video. And this is a video that shows several different snapshots of our DCPS early childhood classrooms. So you'll get a sample here of some of our fabulous early childhood teachers and the amazing classroom experiences that they create for children while in the classroom. And so as you're watching, think back to those experiences or those developmental objectives that I showed in those orange boxes just a moment ago. Think back to those and think about what is it that the teacher's doing in very simple ways to address those skills, to teach those skills, if you will, even though it doesn't feel like teaching, it will feel very natural. But what is the teacher doing to support some of those skills that we just took a look at? So we can go ahead, Jerry, when you're ready with the video, and we'll watch. We may need to, I don't know if it's muted. Not sure if folks are able to hear it. I'm seeing the amazing Miss Kafafi, but not hearing her.
They're friendly, they're on the ground, and sometimes insects turn into butterflies. But caterpillars are the insects that turn into butterflies. That's right. It's scary, Miss Bird. It's scary. Okay, you don't have to touch it if you don't want. You want to stand next to me and you can work with me. So I'm just exploring. I can see that. Come look. He's getting stuck on mine.
Mira, 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 mira. Alguien repite conmigo, madera. Ay, pero yo necesito ayuda. ¿De dónde viene la madera?
De un tree.
¿Vamos a hablar español, Forrest? ¿De un qué? De un árbol. La madera viene de un árbol. Ay, me voy a sentar. ¿Y de qué es esta silla de mi salón? De madera. Y mira, todo el mundo toca el suelo. ¿Y de qué es este suelo? De madera. Y está duro. ¿Está blandito o está duro? Duro. Súper. Ok, luego te voy a dejar tocar la madera. Pero mira, ¿qué tengo aquí? Todo el mundo mira, ¿qué es esto? ¿Esto es igual que esto? No. ¿No? ¿Qué dime? Cuéntame. ¿Qué pasa aquí, Forrest?
This one looks like paper.
Ah, parece papel. ¿Podemos decir papel?
Papel.
Sí, Herschel, ¿qué quieres decir tú?
This one looks like a block, and that one, and this one looks more heavier, and this
This one doesn't.
Griffin, how are we doing over here? Let's see. Where did your R go? Where did your R go?
Yeah.
There's your G. And you had your lowercase r. Where did it go? Where did it go? Look what I found, though. I found uppercase R. G, R. Oh, it was behind you. It was behind you. G, R. What comes? I.
G-R-I-F-F-I-N.
That's your whole name. Which can we find next? We have the G, the R, and next comes the I. Let's take a look if we can find the I. I think there might be a card. Is there something underneath our library shelf?
Okay, so those were some of our amazing pre-kindergarten teachers in schools across the district. The one portion of that clip that we were not able to see, that's Miss Kafafi, who you see here on the screen. And so what she's doing with her student who is playing in the block area, obviously, is he went over to the block area, he started building a block, and then he started talking about the Three Little Pigs, which they had read earlier in the day, and he was going to recreate the house. And so she was just asking him some really good questions, making connections to the story and that type of thing as they were talking about the Three Little Pigs and how he could recreate this in the block area. And so take a moment to think. We're not going to go ahead and add those in the chat right now, but just think about some of the things that you noticed the teacher doing. As you can see here, that none of the teachers that we just had the pleasure of seeing were implementing what we would consider very detailed, well-planned lessons. But what they were doing was very thoughtful ways of engaging with the children in ways that supported those objectives that we looked at just a moment ago. And so think about some of the things that you saw those teachers doing that was helpful in promoting the children's learning. And then think about how you do some of those things yourself at home, probably without even thinking about it. And then with that, we're going to shift to what we can do at home, what you as parents and caregivers can do at home to support learning, to focus on all of those developmental skills or objectives that I shared a few moments ago. And one of the most important is talk. One of the good things about these important early learning skills is they're actually pretty easy to work into a daily routine in a way that's really effective. So one of the things that we know about early learning is that language development is probably the most important thing that children from the birth to 5 can be working on and can be developing. And we know that language skills or language development is probably the most important predictor of later literacy skills. What that means is a child with very strong language skills in the early childhood years is probably going to have an easier time learning to read and is probably going to do better throughout the elementary school years, because language really is the foundation of so much of everything else that they do in school. So talk to your child, have conversations with your child, back and forth conversations, use big words. So it may feel weird to be using words that your children aren't familiar with. That's actually really important to do. And then to explain what those words mean, explain in a child-friendly way, and then use that word again and again so they get to hear it over and over and over. So vocabulary, again, is really, really important for later learning. So really important that the kids are hearing lots of language and lots of words. Ask questions. Listen to what your child says and then ask follow-up questions and make connections. What that means is simply when you see something, make a connection to something the child may have already seen or already done or something like that. We can go ahead. And so this is just, again, making conversations using vocabulary words. Everything that happens in the, in a daily routine is an opportunity to use language, to practice language, and to build language. So weather is a fantastic opportunity to engage kids in language and thinking. Something as simple as, where do you think that lightning came from? Where's the snow coming from? Where is it going when it hits the ground? I noticed there was a puddle here when it was raining yesterday, but today the puddle's gone. What do you think happened? So great opportunities, just regular daily events. I think when you're out taking for a walk, think about all the words that you can build into when you're walking down the street, all the vocabulary words and all the really great questions. And these are some of my favorite sentence starters that I think are really, really useful, both in terms of developing language skills and also developing critical thinking. That reminds me, which again is a great way to make connections. Hey, that dog reminds me of Uncle Joe's dog that we saw last week, or this reminds me of that book we just read. I wonder what would happen if. I wonder what would happen if one of those dogs started to run and the other didn't. I noticed that some of those dogs are large and some of those dogs are small. How do you think we could blank, like what, fill in the blank? All of those kinds of questions and all of those kinds of statements are really, really helpful in supporting language skills and thinking skills. And again, may not feel like you're doing a lesson, may not feel like you're teaching, but a great way to promote learning. Similarly, reading. And so just like language, reading with your child, if you can read to your child at least once a day, then you're doing great. If you can do that more, that's great too, but at least once a day, just to take the opportunity to sit down for a few minutes and read a book. Talk about the book, meaning talk about the story, but also talk about the book itself, like where's the front cover, where's the back? When we read from left to right and we go from the top to the bottom. Maybe talk about some of the words are big and some of the words are small. So just noticing the aspects of the book and the aspects of the print. And then all of those things in terms of using vocabulary words and making connections that I mentioned just a minute ago, those are absolute fantastic opportunities to incorporate into read alouds as well. And they develop all of those skills that you can see down there below. We can go ahead. And play. So I've talked about play a little bit already. I think many of you probably have heard, children learn through play. It's really good for them. And so play, just like language, is another thing that families can do at home in a way that's really effective at promoting learning and also really simple and easy to do. So look for and embrace problems. Sometimes as parents, we feel like part of our role is to help avoid problems for our children and sort of pave the way for them so that they don't encounter problems. And actually problems are fantastic learning opportunities. So embrace them and don't shy away from them and ask, like, how do you think we can solve this? Or what do you think would happen if? And what else could we try? And then try something and then engage in conversations about how did that go? What else could work? And again, as you're playing with your child, a lot of language, a lot of conversation, and think about the vocabulary words that they're hearing and how you can build those. Okay, next one. So we'll talk for a minute about toys. Toys are great, but the fantastic thing about learning through play is that you actually don't need toys. You can create really, really good learning opportunities with all kinds of materials that you can find either in the home or outside near the home that don't cost any money and that are actually really, really simple. And so you'll see here the two images on the right. Ramps are some of my favorite things for promoting learning, language, and critical thinking, and all kinds of great questions you can weave in. You can see the one on the top, even starting with which car do we think is going to go faster, and then why, and then trying that out, and then maybe taking a measuring tape or a ruler and measuring the distance that the cars went at the bottom of the ramp. And then similar to the image below, playing around with the ramp a little bit. What happens if we make it a little higher? What happens if we make it a little bit lower? Again, you can measure it. You can write down what the children discover, and there's opportunities for literacy skills in there. All kinds of activities and critical thinking can be built into water play. I'll skip over that one for now in the interest of time and go to the rocks, which look like just simple rocks. But if you think back to the skills that we looked at just a moment ago, some of the things like counting, classifying into groups, things like that, ordering by size, all of those things can be done with something as simple as a big pile of rocks. They can group them by size, they can group them by color, they can count them, they can order them from smallest to largest, largest to smaller. And all of those things are important preschool skills that children need to be developing anyway, and this is a fun way to do it at home. All right. And then finally, again, what you see in the blue box on the left are some of the skills that teachers are working on with children this age: counting, comparing, finding and naming letters, finding things in the house or in the apartment or in the neighborhood that start with a certain sound. Rhyming is really important. Sorting into groups and making and noticing patterns. And by patterns, I mean things like red, blue, that type of thing, something that repeats itself. And then you'll see in these little circles things that are just part of many families' daily routine. And you can think about how you can build all of these skills into all of these things. So as you're sorting the laundry, again, counting, grouping or sorting by size, by color, comparing, those types of things. Finding and naming letters. Go on a little letter hunt in the apartment or in the neighborhood. Find certain letters, or find things, if your child is ready to start thinking about sound, find things that start with certain letters and see how many you can find. Rhyming is really important. It also helps with literacy down the road, and you can rhyme anytime, when you're waiting for the bus, when you're taking a walk, even simple games like I see something that rhymes with log. I see something that rhymes with whatever. And it's a fun game to help, kill the time as you wait for the bus, and also builds in a lot of really important thinking skills and prerequisite literacy skills. Patterns, same kind of thing. As you're making a snack, you can, green grape, red grape, green grape, red grape, that type of thing, or a cracker grape. Those are patterns, and those are the kinds of skills that teachers are working on that also help children develop math skills down the road. So as you think about all of these different experiences that you have in your normal daily routine, and think about how you can work those skills in. There are many resources available online to support this, some really fantastic resources. These are just a couple of our favorites: PBS Kids for Parents and Sesame Street, which has been around forever, but really is a fantastic learning resource. And so these are great resources from parents, and also the resources that you'll find online on the Canvas portal once you're enrolled and school begins on August 31st. And so with that, Natalie, I think I'm going to kick it back to you. I'm sure we have a bunch of questions. So why don't we take a few moments to take those questions?
Sure. Thanks, Cheryl. So much great information shared there. We do have a couple questions from the chat box that we'll address. We'll just do a couple of them so we can close out on time. So the first one, I know you all did a lot of thinking about the curriculum and had to transition to a virtual environment. How did you ensure that the early childhood curriculum was appropriate for a virtual instruction?
That's a very good question. So that the curriculum that we use, which is the creative curriculum, is based in research, and it is a very effective curriculum for young children. Some of the activities, as you can imagine, if you think about how young children learn through active engagement, some of the lessons in the curriculum don't translate as easily as others into a virtual environment because they involve hands-on activities. So for those activities, we have an instructional team that's based in central office that has been working very hard all summer on taking those activities and thinking about how they can translate into the home environment, into things that families can do at home with their children or that teachers can do in a virtual environment. So some of the curriculum activities just translated very nicely and easily, like a read aloud, and some of the other activities are being adapted for teachers, and so that they will be able to fit in a virtual environment.
Great, thanks. And we'll just do one more question, and then we'll close out. So can you speak a little bit about a couple of different specific groups? So bilingual education, ESL learning, and then IEPs, and how that'll all fit into this early childhood schedule?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So I'll start with the IEPs. So as you saw in the sample schedule that I talked about earlier, there is lots of opportunities for individualized instruction during the day, and we're really focusing as much as possible on that individualization. So our general education teachers will be doing that with students with IEPs in their classroom. And then we also have special educators who will be leading lessons of their own. Sometimes they will be joining the general education teacher in an inclusive environment, and oftentimes they will also be leading their own lessons that are based on IEPs, the students' IEP objectives. So they will have what is basically like an individualized learning plan, which is not an IEP, but it's basically, this is how we're going to take this IEP and we're going to translate it into this virtual environment. And we'll have other staff members like speech language pathologists, and others who are also leading instruction or joining the teacher for instruction. And then real quick, because I know we're a little bit short on time in terms of the bilingual piece. And so we are including bilingual resources as the part of these Canvas, the Canvas resources that I talked about earlier. And teachers are tailoring those as well to meet the different language needs of the students that we have. I know Robin's team, Robin is also on this call, and it is her team that has been doing a lot of work around that. Robin, do you have anything that you might add in terms of the work that your team has been doing to make sure that the resources are appropriate for dual language learners?
Yes, definitely. We, in addition to the videos and things that are available online in both English and Spanish, we have developed with dual language teachers series of extension activities that are going to be available to support vocabulary growth, and in addition, visuals. We've created a bank of visuals that can be used.
Right. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So thank you to Cheryl for all of that great information, and to our all of the folks on the back end who are answering questions in the Q&A. We'll continue to try and answer as many questions as possible, and also we'll be sending out some follow-up materials, including the recording and a copy of this presentation in the coming days. So just a couple more things. So for additional information and resources, visit the DCPS Reopen Strong website. We'd love to hear feedback on this session, so you can use the bit.ly link in the second bullet to provide a quick survey evaluation of this parent university. Also, it's really important that all students have access to the technology they need for virtual learning. So if you have not done so, please fill out the Tech Access Survey using the link on the screen here. And finally, for additional questions or to follow up on anything you heard today, you can reach out to parentu@k12.dc.gov. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great evening, everyone.